Hello, party people, and welcome to another episode of the Mug Life Podcast. I'm Brittany, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking all about how your brain is like a toddler. And I'm going to teach you how to parent your brain. That way, when you start to set these goals, you want to create new habits, you have these limiting beliefs that are holding you back, you have a game plan so that you can move into that next level of living, that healthy living, where you get to ultimately become that person, that mom you've always wanted to be. And today, this episode is going to blow your mind because it's going to completely reframe the way that you think about your habits and the things that you do day in and day out. Sipping the coffee. It's so good. So I thought I would start off today's podcast with a story to kind of give you a picture in your mind about what I'm talking about when I say that your brain is like a toddler. So last night I was making dinner for my son, Brian. And if you don't know, I have two sons. I have Leon, who's my oldest. He's 12. And then I have Brian, who's 3. And so he is full-blown toddler. Speaks his mind, has no inhibitions, just like is who he is. And so I was making meatballs, and I'm on a meatball kick right now. They're just so easy, by the way. Like, you can cook them up, you can mix anything inside of them, and then they like microwave really well. But anyways, that's for another podcast. Great meal prep idea. So I was pulling out the meatballs for him, and before I could even set the plate down, he was like, "Nope. No, mama, I'm not going to eat it. Yuck." And of course, what did I do as his mom? I tried to convince him that what I was serving him wasn't going to kill him, right? Like, I promised you, I'm not trying to poison you, child. But I said it like, oh, well, honey, it's healthy. It's yummy. It's going to taste really good. It kind of tastes like chicken nuggets, right? Like, and I give him these associations to like make that connection. Like, okay, if it's like chicken nuggets, I might like it and I might try it, right? I mean, I was throwing out all the things. Man, you're going to be big and strong if you eat these meatballs. Look, mommy's eating these meatballs. Yum, yum, yum. Here comes the airplane. All the annoying shit that we do as moms to try and get our child to eat the dang food. And in those moments, I was just trying to convince him that I knew what was best for him. And he was uncomfortable. He was frustrated. He was very stubborn in the way that he believed was to be true, and that those meatballs were poison, and if he ate those, they would be gross, even though he didn't even try them. So stick with me here on this analogy. And remember, I'm talking to you about how your brain is like a toddler. And so, quick thinking mom over here, I was like, oh, I know how to convince him. I said, do you see those little green things? Because of course, that was one of the big reasons why he didn't want to eat it, because he saw there are green things in it. And I said, do you see those spinach bits? Those are like Hulk power. Like, you love the Hulk, right? The Hulk's so strong. And he's like, yeah, those little bites of green in there are going to give you Hulk muscles. And I saw it like go across his eyes, like he was like considering it and thinking about it. And I got him to take a bite. Okay. And the reason I tell you this story is because it really paints a picture of how we can learn to reframe our thoughts and make connections and have positive reinforcement around the things that we're doing that feel hard, that feel challenging for the brain and challenging our limiting beliefs, right? And we can do that by parenting our brains. Okay. And so just like my toddler, our brain thinks it knows what's best for us, right? It wants to keep us safe. Your brain is there to take care of you. It has no idea that we don't even live in like the caveman age, right? Like, it has no idea that a saber-toothed tiger isn't going to come out of the bushes and eat your face off. It has no idea. All it wants to do is stick to the plan, be safe, and take care of business, right? And if you're introducing something new, like meatballs, or in our case, maybe a new exercise routine. Maybe we're trying to introduce other types of, mindfulness practices. Maybe we're creating new habits. Maybe we're trying to quit habits that we consider bad or unhelpful, right? When we're doing things that are uncomfortable or things that maybe, we know that would probably benefit us, our brain, our toddler brain is like, no way. Like, even if you do it for a couple of days, like, it starts to set off the alarms, and it's like, this is not okay. We're not okay. Everything is not okay. Abort mission right now. We've got to leave. I don't even want to try it. This isn't what I do. This isn't how we roll. And then somehow your limiting beliefs or self-sabotage or your yo-yo dieting loop happens. Okay. And so today I'm going to give you my 3-step process so that you can start reframing and parenting your brain into leaning into this identity that you want to become, or continuing these habits that you want to create. And so today, I'm going to give you the tools to outsmart your brain, okay? Because just like your toddler, your brain loves you and your brain is just doing what it knows to be true, even if what it knows to be true doesn't really serve it. And so just like my toddler who thought spinach was death and doesn't realize that spinach is nutritious and healthy and would help him grow, it felt uncomfortable and it felt new. So it said, no way. And so I'm going to first teach you, like I promise you, this will be a very basic science lesson. This is not going to be anything extreme, but I want to make sure I speak to you about the two parts of the brain that I'm going to be talking about and how that affects what we're doing day to day. Trust me, I'm not a scientist. I do not study the brain. So let me just put that out there that I am just trying to articulate this to you in a way that makes sense. So you have evidence that you can kind of put in the old holster. Okay. So let me take a sip before I jump in. So the two brain systems I'm going to be talking about are the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, okay? So the limbic system is like your toddler brain, okay? It's reactive, it's emotional, it kind of jumps in maybe when it shouldn't right away, and it's very raw. I just think of it like all of those like emotions that you feel, like anger, like all those frustration, things like that kind of make you just react. It's very reactive, okay? And then we have our prefrontal cortex, which I call the forehead brain, okay? It's right there in front. It's the brain that does more of the logical thinking, the reasoning. It's more of like the parent brain, okay? And what we want to do, ideally, is get this like really good relationship between the two parts of our brain because we want that emotional side, right? We want to really dig into the subconscious part of the brain where we think about our values and love and trust and things that really motivate us, kind of like I talked about in my first podcast. And we also, though, want to have that logical side, that reasoning side, you know, the part of the brain that really makes you take a breath, look at all your options, consider what is actually true, and then make a decision. And the world doesn't roll that way. We're not going to just always we're not just going to like stop in the moment and like create a checks and balance chart or like, pros and cons, like what is the best decision? Sometimes we're just going to react quickly, and that's just a part of being a human. But what I hope that you get from this podcast today is that you have the power to parent your brain so it runs a little smoother and the decisions that you make can be easier because you are reframing your thoughts and your actions to kind of trick your brain into thinking that what you're doing is safe. Because when you start doing something new, no matter what, it's going to feel uncomfortable and your brain is going to sound the alarms, which is going to make your motivation to do those things a lot harder. I'm going to take a sip real quick. Okay, so I want to give you just one more example to kind of really set in stone this idea of how to parent your brain, okay? So, the idea of like monster under the bed. So like, let's say your toddler, even if you're not a mom, like maybe when you were little, you were like, there's a boogeyman in my closet or there's a monster in your bed. And they're like so sure of it. They are 100% sure there is a monster under their bed ready to eat all 10 of their toes. And so as the parent, we go in and what we do is we acknowledge their feelings, right? We, almost kind of say back to them what they're saying and make sure that we understand what they're saying. We acknowledge it, right? And then we pause and we kind of look at the situation and we think of ways that we can help solve the issue and help them understand that there is no monster under the bed. And then we reassure and we stay consistent with that. And we create an opportunity to reframe the thinking around the monster being under the bed, right? So what we do is we acknowledge that the monster, we acknowledge that they had that thought. Okay. Oh, honey, like, I know you think that there's a monster under your bed. That must feel really scary. And then after acknowledging the feeling, acknowledging the thought, which by the way, thoughts are not truth. Thoughts are not directions. Thoughts are not, the be all, stand all. Thoughts are just ideas in our head that we make to be true because our toddler brain convinces us. So we acknowledge, right? And now we need to reflect. We need to consider the possibilities and ask ourselves, do I know this to be true? Is this really true? And as parents, we can do that for our kids. So we can say, okay, I know that you think that there's a monster under the bed. What makes you think that? And they might respond, well, I heard something in the middle of the night, or I see something, blah, 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 whatever it may be. And you can say, okay, well, what can we do to prove this not to be true? And of course, what do we do as a parent? We open the closet, we look under the bed, we show them, we give evidence, okay? This is the key here. We're giving them evidence that their thought that isn't really serving them, but they believe to be true, is not true. It is not truth. And it is actually unhelpful, right? And so we show them and then we say, it's not there, and we reflect on it. And now the first time we do that, they might wake up the next couple of days and still believe there's a monster under their bed. But if we continue to show up consistently and remind them and nurture them and tell them that it's okay and tell them that you might be a little scared, but here you can do X, Y, and Z to feel better. Maybe we can leave a nightlight on. Maybe we can sing a song before bed. Maybe we can read a happy story before bed. If you want me to come in and I promise I'll come in and check on you, in 20 minutes to make sure that you're safely asleep, doing a monster check, sprinkling monster glitter, like keep out glitter around the bed. Whatever we can do to be consistently nurturing the toddler so that they understand they are safe, that their feelings of being uncomfortable are not serving them, and that the thoughts that they're having that are true are not serving them, and that they can create a new reality. Okay? And so let's use that example then to learn how to parent our brain in a situation with a very common thing that I see with a lot of my clients, which is having trouble with maybe overeating or having a moment where a limiting belief about eating or nutrition really sets them back with this all or nothing mindset. So let's say that you went out for your birthday and in the morning you woke up and you had a big breakfast that your husband or your partner cooked for you, right? It was so delicious. Pancakes with whipped cream and syrup, all the good stuff. And then you went out for lunch and you had a couple cocktails and you had some appetizers, and then you went out with your friends and they bought you a little sweet treat at a bakery, and then you went out to dinner and you had this big plate of pizza with all of the toppings, and then you finished with the ice cream sundae, and you had the time of your life. But then you get home and you're laying in your bed and you're so uncomfortable. Your belly's really full. You're kind of feeling bloated. And all of a sudden, these thoughts start like coming into your brain, and you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I just ate so much food. What was I thinking? And then you fall asleep. Okay. You wake up the next morning and you are bloated. You're tired. You're uncomfortable. And you are beating yourself up. You're thinking to yourself, what was I thinking? Like, I am so fat. Like, I am going to gain so much weight from this. My diet is ruined. I lost control. I have no control around food. I can't go out to eat anymore. I can't enjoy fun things. Like, I really just messed everything up. All the progress I made is ruined. Right? And I mean, listen, your girl's a coach, and I have had thoughts like that. I have had moments where those thoughts have crept in, because guess what? We're human. And growing up in the world that we've grown up in and the culture that we've grown up in, especially if you're my age, this like skinny culture and like diet culture, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast in itself, but our thoughts are a product of our raising, and we take on our experiences all the way from childhood to the present day. And those thoughts are completely normal. But what's important, just like the monster under the bed, we have to learn to recognize truth and reality from these like limiting beliefs, these fears, these all or nothing mindset, really any ideas and thoughts that don't really serve us, okay? And in fact, can make progress a lot harder because we go in these vicious cycles of self-sabotage. And so going back to my story, you woke up and you were just beating yourself up, right? This is when we can start parenting our brain. Okay? Because ultimately these thoughts will happen. You can't just like get rid of these thoughts. It doesn't just ever go away. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you it was magic and poof, we could make it just go away, but it doesn't. So what we can do though is parent our brains and use compassion, just like the monster under the bed story, to really love ourselves into understanding that not every single thought that we have is true, and we don't have to hold on to every single thought. We can have a thought, feel the feels, and then like release it and let it go, and really put our brains into a different reframe of focus so that we can then move forward and not go into a cycle of like self-sabotage. So this scenario could go one of two ways, right? So the first way it could go is you wake up, like we had that scenario where she's just beating herself up, and you decide like, whatever, I ruined it all. I'm just going to go wake up and I'm going to skip breakfast because like I already ate way too many calories, and I'll just have my coffee. And then when lunch comes around, I'm just going to have a salad with a little bit of light dressing on it. And then for dinner, I'm going to be really, really careful, and I'm just going to eat my protein because like, protein is like healthy. Okay. But what happens instead of your plan actually working out that way. And in most cases, when people try to diet or make up for calories, you're going to overeat. You're going to put yourself in a position where you are freaking ravenous, you're starving. And so about 2 o'clock hits and you haven't had anything to eat. Your anxiety is through the roof because you've set off all the alarms with your spike of caffeine, and you just find yourself in the pantry and you're just munching on stuff and just snacking on things. And before you know it, you're already eating more calories than if you would have just eaten breakfast. And by the time you get to dinner, you're just off the rails. Everything feels out of control. You're hungry, but you don't know what you want to eat. And then you overeat. And then and that's where this cycle happens, right? And so what we want to do is stop before that happens, okay? And so the second way that scenario could go would be implementing this process. And a part of my balance framework that I coach my clients through, the second A in balance stands for awareness. Okay. So we want to start practicing being aware and recognizing thoughts that we're having that may not serve us, right? Our toddler brain, which is a part of the limbic system, right? The one that's very reactive, is the one that kind of feeds us these ideas of like panic and anxiety and worry and stress. And so we want to tap on the old prefrontal cortex and have some reasoning, and our parent brain needs to come on. And I know this sounds crazy, but even if you're having like a negative thought or a thought that's not serving you, I've told my clients this before, just like a quick like tap to the prefrontal cortex, to your logical brain, like, okay, slow down. We need to recognize that we are having this thought. It's okay that I'm having these thoughts. These thoughts are normal. Why am I having these thoughts, right? Okay, so the first step is to recognize that you are having a thought that doesn't serve you. And already your brain is like kind of in this like weird, I'm trying to keep you safe. What's going on? Things are normal. This is what we do. And you've got to slow it down, and you've got to be aware of your thoughts and the triggers and the things that are happening. And you can say, okay, I'm aware that I'm having this thought that I'm going to gain like 50 pounds now that I ate one night more than I typically do. I have to stop. I have to ask myself, right? So we recognize, now we're going to reflect. Okay, is this true? Can I be sure that it's true? Am I going to gain 50 pounds because I overate one day? I mean, I can Google that shit. Like, you can look it up. No, you are not going to gain 50 pounds from overeating one day. All right, well, I still feel bad. Like, okay, but what were my triggers? Let's keep reflecting, right? Like, what made me have these negative thoughts? Well, I didn't like the way my stomach looked in the mirror when I woke up this morning. And my digestion is off, and I feel bloated, and my brain's foggy from the alcohol. Well, maybe I'm having these thoughts because my body isn't in a good physical state, right? And when I'm able to reflect on the why behind the thoughts that I'm having, and I can really kind of extract these thoughts and look at them and just look at the thoughts that I'm having, and I can kind of turn it around and look at it from all angles as opposed to just feeling it very reactive, then I'm giving myself the awareness and the space to use my parent brain and to parent my toddler brain into reframing the situation. And so, which leads me into the third step. So we have recognized the thought, we've pulled it out, we've created awareness around it, we're curious about it, we're not judging ourselves, we're just kind of like a fly on the wall, okay? We're reflecting on it, we're noticing triggers, we're asking ourselves why, we're thinking about the sensations in our body, we're thinking about the way we feel, we're thinking about past experiences that may have contributed to these feelings. And there's a lot there. And one thing you can do, which in the show notes, I'm going to send you a video, which kind of goes through like a really quick training on a little tool that you can do called a brain dump in moments where you need a chance to reflect, but you're not able to do it just kind of in your brain. And it's a really useful tool for when you're feeling kind of reactive. So make sure to check the show notes for that, for the brain dump activity. But continuing on with what I'm saying. So the third step then is to reframe. Okay, so we recognize, we reflect, and we reframe. And when we reframe our thoughts, we kind of trick our brains, just like I said in the beginning where I was talking about my son and Hulk, and I was like, oh, those green flakes are Hulk power and they're going to make you really strong. I didn't change the spinach. I just reframed what the spinach looked like to him. And so what we need to do then is to reframe the thoughts that we're having and the situation that we're in so that we can then move forward and not fall into these cycles of self-sabotage, maybe when you overeat or this all or nothing mindset or feeling like you want to just quit it all, right? And so this last step is so, so important, but it's the hardest part. It is the hardest part because our brains like to be comfortable. They like to be safe. They have created these beliefs in our brains that we think to be true, and we've just like done it all our lives. And it's kind of like we're on autopilot in most cases. And that's why just bringing this, even that first step of creating awareness of the thoughts that we're having. I mean, you can go all day and not realize you're having so many thoughts, some negative, some positive, kind of really depends. There's no such thing really as a good or bad emotion. I think we all just experience emotions differently. And that's also for another podcast. But I really want to encourage you to just start small with creating that awareness, being present in the moment, which is so hard to do in today's world. But once we get present in that moment and then we're able to reflect, maybe even do a brain dump, which like I said, we'll talk about later, then we can reframe and reposition ourselves so that we can lean into this new identity, to be the type of person that we want to become. Right? And so after we tap our brain and we think like, okay, I'm going to parent you right now, brain. I know toddler brain. I know that these thoughts are scary for you. And I know that you're feeling insecure. And I recognize that this is sensitive for you. And I acknowledge your feelings. And I know this is really hard. And I know you've been working so hard to lose weight. You've been, eating all the right foods and you're really focused on your nutrition and your exercise. And like almost picturing like wrapping your arm around yourself and what you would want like your best friend to tell you or your own mom to tell you. What would your parents say to you? Or it doesn't have to be a parent even, just like somebody that you know loves you and takes care of you, right? What would they say to you in that moment? Like truly think about what they would say to you in that moment of weakness, in that moment of just feeling like you would ruin everything. Right? They would probably speak kindly. They would probably listen. They would probably reassure you that the monster isn't really under the bed and that everything was going to be okay. Right? And if we can lean into that voice, that parent voice that can almost just come in with a blanket, just cover us up and remind us that these little moments aren't going to make or break us. And that everything we do is an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow. And every single thought that we have, we don't have to cling on to. We can acknowledge it, we can have those thoughts, but we don't have to let that control our identity and the way that we choose to live our lives. And so when we reframe our thoughts, it might look like something like this, okay? So you're in that position, you've done a brain dump and you're really feeling the feels and you say, okay, instead of saying, I always overeat, I can't control myself around food, I'll never be able to stick to my diet. You might say something like, I am learning to think about how I want to eat meals throughout the day. I'm learning how to navigate my nutrition right now. I'm learning how to understand that food doesn't always have to be fuel. It can be an experience. And I'm also learning to accept that I don't want my diet and the foods that I eat to control my experiences. I'm learning to love my body and respect my body, even though I may not love the way it looks or the way it feels right now. And you might even say something like, those thoughts are not like me. One thing I taught one of my clients recently was, I would say, in the moment where you're having a thought that doesn't serve you, that you recognize, because she got really good at just like recognizing her thoughts right away. She had this all or nothing mindset, but we got into this practice, right, of recognizing, being aware in the moment. And she started catching herself and calling herself out. And one thing that was helpful was for her to say, well, that doesn't sound like me, like out loud. When she says something like she has a negative thought about her body or a negative thought about her food, or like, well, I need to skip breakfast. She'd say, well, that doesn't sound like me. I don't skip breakfast. I nourish my body. And as silly as it sounds to say something like that out loud, what we're doing is we're collecting evidence in our brain that we are this new identity. We are this new person and it's comfortable and it's okay. We're reassuring our brain that the things that we're doing that feel uncomfortable are moving in the right direction of safety, right? And it's not scary and it's not detrimental to our health. And that is why so many times diets fail, or exercise plans fail, or, creating healthy habits fails, or, stopping unhealthy habits. We get in this fight or flight mode. We don't allow ourselves to be present in the moment and aware of our triggers and aware of our feelings, and also just like accepting our feelings and allowing ourselves to feel the feels. Like we live in this world, it's like, toughen up, buttercup. It's all about discipline. Well, yeah, it is. And that plays a role. But if we are not really acknowledging ourselves as a parent and really parenting our brain, which means when I think of parenting, it doesn't have to be a parent. It could be a guardian, whatever it may be, a grown-up. When you're grown-upping, that person is your mentor. They're your leader. You trust them. You trust that they know what's best for you. And you go in. It's like that fall thing where you fall back and they catch you. Like, they're going to catch you. You fall off Mount Everest, they're going to catch you at the bottom, right? There's just this like innate trust that you build with somebody, as long as that relationship is a good one and a healthy relationship with your parent or guardian. And so we have to start parenting our brains into believing the changes that are uncomfortable are the most special and important ones that we'll ever do, because our brain may not want to grow and change, but our mind does. Our mind is flexible and adaptive, and it always wants to kind of do more and be more, right? We have this alter ego, right, inside of us. That's who we want to be. And if we want to get to that place, we have to start being uncomfortable. And so instead of going into this, man, like I always do this, like I'm such a failure, I'm such a, all these negative thoughts, if we can parent our brains and really almost not trick our brain, because tricking sounds kind of like deceitful. So I wouldn't say trick, but I would say maybe really just creating opportunities for them to see a new perspective and just kind of holding them in a direction. We hold our children in a direction. We want to direct them in the right way. We kind of want them to figure it out on their own, but we guide them. And so if we can guide our thoughts into a much more positive direction, then the things that we want to do become easier to do. Now, let me take a sip. I will say this, just because I'm providing you with this like 3 steps, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you're going to have all your limiting beliefs be gone and everything's going to be great and peachy keen and you're going to lose 10 pounds and you're going to be the best you ever. I wish it was that simple. I really do. This kind of stuff is a process and it takes work, but the best thing that you can do is to start taking action now and start showing up and parenting your brain and teaching your brain that the things that you are doing are good for you and ultimately will lead to a very positive result. And one other way you can do that is to really give these moments for positive reinforcement to the brain. So they can just like a little memory bank where your brain can put these positive things back by doing these hard things. So just for example, if you're starting a habit where you're walking every morning, okay, there's going to come a day when your motivation wears off and you are not about walking in the morning. Maybe your kid had a sleep regression. Maybe you are tired from a long work project the night before. Maybe you just couldn't fall asleep one night, whatever it may be. And your brain's going to be like, listen me, I don't want to go for a walk. And it's going to try and convince you, okay? Your toddler brain, it's going to throw a tantrum and it's going to say like, I don't want to, I'm not going. You can't make me. I don't want to go. I'm tired. And so then it's your opportunity to come in as the parent, right? And really reframe it so that your brain recognizes it as a good thing. And so you can come in and you can be like, and this is you talking to yourself, right? So parent your brain being like, okay, but your shoes are already laid out by the door. You've created a plan. You have structure around this. Do you remember how you felt when you went on that walk yesterday? You were really stressed out and you were having a moment and you had some cleaning projects to do. You felt a little overwhelmed and you went out on a walk and then you came back and you were so much more productive. Do you remember that? And do you remember that one time last week when you were walking and you saw that really, really pretty bird in the snow and it made you think of your grandma? Do you remember that? Wasn't that special? Wasn't that a really nice moment? Oh, and do you remember how the other day you woke up and you were so tired, but you went for it and you went on a walk and you came back so much more energized, right? And so by really reframing and parenting our brain with that prefrontal cortex, the PFC right here, and using that logical reasoning to kind of nurture our brains into recognizing all of the positive things that come out from whatever habit we're trying to start or continue, we're really just creating consistent positive reinforcement that what we're doing is good, even on the days that it's hard. And so what's really important is that when you are in these moments where it feels really hard, just remember to talk to your brain like it's a toddler. Acknowledge that you know how hard it is and you know that you're having these feelings and that you wish that you could make it better right now. But you promise that the things that you're going through, the reason that it's hard is because it's going to help you so much. It's going to help you grow to be the person you've always wanted to be. And I promise you that there are no monsters under the bed. And we will keep showing up, and I'll keep reminding you of all of the things that are really in your favor, all the things that are really working for you because you're choosing to do the hard thing. And if we can continue to be a gentle parent and continue to kind of put this filter, this parent filter over these limiting beliefs and these negative ideas, we then give ourselves the capacity to create consistent habits, to create progress that we've always been after. And so I guess I want to end today with just like a simple reminder to you. And remember that in the show notes, I have a little activity that you can do because every week I will be making sure that I send you a little snippet or a little sip of support in some kind of way. May that be an activity, a video, a document, a freebie, whatever it may be, just so you really get value out of this podcast. And so I want to leave you with something here. And I want to tell you something. You are so capable of doing anything you set your mind to do. I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart, that I believe in you, that I love you, that I know that you have the potential to do anything you want to do. And your own worst enemy is right in here. And you have the power to change that. You can talk to yourself in a more gentle and compassionate way. It doesn't have to be about self-discipline and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, right? It can be about understanding and recognizing. And then in those moments, you can use those strong parenting skills, that tough love, right? Because then it comes from a place of like, I love you and I believe in you. And this is what we got to do because it's going to be worth it. As opposed to just suck it up, buttercup. Do you see the difference? And so if you take anything from this today, I hope that you just start simple. And my one tip for you would be, if you want to start implementing this process, would be to just do the first step, which is just start recognizing your thoughts throughout the day. Just pay attention. That's all. No judgment. Try not to overthink anything, but just like kind of keep a mental note of the thoughts that you're having throughout the day, through all the things that you're doing, when you're eating, when you're playing with your kids, when you're at your job, whatever it may be, and especially around the time that you are doing things that feel difficult, okay? And so that's it. You could even start today. Just pay attention. What are my thoughts? Am I present in the moment with myself? What am I noticing about myself? What does it say about my beliefs about myself and my identity, right? And then eventually you can start doing a brain dump or reflecting on it and noticing triggers to why those thoughts happen. But we need to start by first creating this mindful practice of just being aware of our thoughts. Okay. I don't want it to be overwhelming and I don't want it to feel like another thing, but it'll be really helpful. And I encourage you to try it where you're just being present and aware. That's it. Just recognizing thoughts and also understanding that your thoughts are not truth, right? It's just your brain trying to keep you safe. And we need to start practicing pulling the thought out and saying, do I know that this is true? Am I really sure that this is true? And then eventually we will lead into really parenting our brain and teaching our brain ways to kind of navigate hard situations. Okay. All right. That's all I have for you today. But if you could do me a huge favor, it would mean so, so much to me if you could share this with another mom, a friend, a sister, a brother. If you could share this with somebody, getting it out there helps me help more people. And that would be the biggest gift you could give to me. Also, if you would like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, if you are just listening to this on audio, you're missing out on all the video fun. I am here in my car with my coffee mug, sipping coffee with you, and I'd love for you to enjoy the full experience. So hop onto YouTube and subscribe to my channel so you will not miss a single episode. And I'll also be posting other videos that are really just going to help you feel like a more holistically healthy human being overall. And if you enjoyed this podcast, You can tag me on Instagram, Find Balance with Britt, and you can share your thoughts and just tell me all about how this helped you or how you're using what I've taught you in this podcast. And then, of course, if you could take the time, I would be so grateful if you could give me 5 stars on this podcast and just let me know with comments. I read everything, and I would be so excited to hear from you that you listened. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.